You may question his lineage, you may question his goals, you may even question his morality, but you cannot question his power. My latest legendary Skyrim build is one that has been in the works for a long time now, and I've got it to the point where it can go one-on-one with pretty much any enemy in the game without breaking a sweat. If you enjoy my builds, don't forget to leave a like and a comment below, and give the video a share too. It really helps me to keep making them. The first memory the Fire Lord had was of waking up surrounded by ash and bathed in flame. This is the one fleeting memory he had of his earlier life, before he was living on the streets in Cyrodiil. He had no home, but there was still another who managed to live with him. A fellow Dunmer, but one of a much smaller frame, and clearly far older. This individual would follow him wherever he went, and talk to him of the life they had before this one of grandeur and riches. He assured the Fire Lord that he had once been a very important member of one of the great houses, and that his rightful place was in Morrowind, ruling over the lower classes. The younger Dunmer had no memory of any of this, so he didn't know if it was the truth or not. As time went on, it mattered less and less though. His companion constantly spoke of better times, and his words promised a life that the Fire Lord came to long for, one in which he wasn't forced to beg on the street for scraps and bow his head to others. Why should he be on the street, whilst there was a seat in a palace somewhere waiting for him? As the years went on, he grew more bitter about his situation. He started to grow aloof, and wouldn't listen to anyone other than his follower, cherishing his words and treating them as gospel. One morning, as the sun was rising from a distant horizon, a nobleman rode into town upon a snow-white horse. The man treated the guards with little respect, and he certainly didn't hold any for the residents. When the older dark elf walked up to him and begged for a coin or two, he was struck to the ground. The nobleman ordered his guards to beat the beggar to teach him a lesson. Seeing this made rage rear its ugly head within the Flame Lord, and he called out, ordering the guards to stop. Looking at him standing there in rags, they laughed him off, and continued kicking the figure at their feet. With their backs turned, the Flame Lord charged at them, striking one in the back of the head. His blow did little more than annoy the man, and the two guards grabbed hold of him as the nobleman climbed down from his horse. He began spouting forth a speech on class, and explaining that the elf had no right to look at people such as him, let alone attempt to fight them. All this did was anger the elf further, causing his blood to boil and his skin to grow hot. Feeling something new grip hold of him, the Dunmer embraced the feeling and let it take over. His entire body was suddenly shrouded in flame, and the guards holding him let go as the fire began to spread onto them, burning hotter than any natural flame. The Fire Lord raised a hand to the nobleman's neck, raising him up from the ground and slowly increasing the temperature. As the heat became unbearable, the man's skin gave way, and it took only a few seconds for the muscles in his neck to melt away, leaving scorched bone barely separating his head and body. Dropping the dead man to the ground, the Fire Lord felt the last spark of rage consume him, and wave after wave of fire burst forth from within, burning all those around him, and setting many of the homes alight. He woke up sometime later, looking up at fragments of a starry night, hidden away between thick tree branches. Looking around, he saw his friend lying next to him, skin melted away like wax, and no sign of life present from his motionless body. The man had obviously used his last moments to drag the Fire Lord to safety before death claimed him. After taking a moment to grieve for his friend, the young Dunmer rose from the ground and began to travel north. He decided he would attempt to make his way back to Morrowind and seek out his rightful place in life. On his journey, he will be caught up in an ambush and is knocked unconscious before he can fight back, leading to him arriving at Helgen for execution. The main skills of this build are Destruction, Alchemy, and Enchanting. Destruction is essential to the character. Not only is it the main way for us to kill enemies, but the Impact perk will allow us to stagger lock them too. This ability is crucial for any Destruction mage playing on the legendary difficulty setting, as you can't allow your foes to outmaneuver you. Obviously, you will also want to focus on the fire-based branch of this skill tree, as we will be almost exclusively be using fire-based magic. Alchemy and Enchanting go hand in hand for enhancing our abilities as a mage. Enchanting helps us to reduce the cost of our spells through the Fortified Destruction enchantment, ensuring we can cast enough to deal with our foes before our Magika pool runs dry. Alchemy will let us replenish our Magika pool once it does run out, and we can also craft Fortify Destruction potions to make our spells far more deadly. In addition, don't forget the two can be paired together to let you craft Fortify Enchantment potions and a powerful Alchemy suit to complement one another. The additional skills of this build are Heavy Armour, Smithing and Illusion. Heavy Armour and Smithing are here to grant us a decent armour rating. Although we want to avoid getting hit wherever possible, we can't afford to go down in a single hit, and need to be able to get in the thick of a fight every once in a while. I will leave the full list of perks I took from these skills in the description below, but I will say right now that you only need to focus on getting the Elven Smithing perk from that tree. But if you take this build to a much higher level, then I recommend you also get the Daedric Smithing perk to make all of your gear legendary. Illusion may at first seem a little out of place in this build, especially seeing as I don't use it at all in the footage. The reason it is in here is because Fear and Fire are linked together in Skyrim, meaning they benefit one another. If we take the Aspect of Terror perk in the Illusion skill tree, then all of our fire-based destruction spells will get an increase in power. It also fits in fairly nicely with roleplaying, helping to represent the rage dwelling within the Fire Lord. As a standing stone for this build, I personally use the Lord Stone. It helps to keep you alive, and I didn't feel like any of the others helped me out much more than this one. That being said, don't feel you have to go for this stone, and instead I'd recommend testing out a couple of others and seeing if any work better for you. The main power I recommend using with this build would be the Fire Breath Shout. In the interest of time, I wasn't actually able to get this, but this shout can become very powerful for a few bonuses. You'll want all 3 words of power, and you should also meditate upon the word to increase its effectiveness. In addition, if you go far enough down the Dragonborn questline, then you will eventually reach a quest called the Gardener of Men. Towards the end of this quest, you will get the choice of gaining one of 3 different abilities from a black book. Go with the Dragonborn Flame, and whenever the Fire Breath Shout kills an enemy, a fire worm will emerge from their corpse and fight for you. On the legendary difficulty setting, this is admittedly of limited use, and it will rarely ever take place, but on lower difficulties, it's a real advantage to have. Don't forget that you also start with the Ancestor's Wrath Racial Power, which essentially works as a low tier flame cloak. This is far from the strongest power out there, so I would only really suggest using it for role-playing purposes, as the added damage will rarely come in handy. Although you will be relying on magic to deal your damage, I would recommend carrying around a Staff of Conjure Flame Atronach, in order to add even more fire-based damage to the battlefield. For armour, you will wear a full suit of heavy chitin armour, minus the helmet, as you will instead be wearing the Dragon Priest mask Azadal. This mask grants us an added 50% fire resistance and a bonus 25% damage to fire-based attacks. This is great as it maxes out our fire resistance, whilst also granting us a substantial damage increase. I will add a side note that getting this mask is insanely difficult if you're not prepared, and it's recommended to be around level 30 before completing the relevant dungeon. I did it in the mid-20s and died a fair few times before defeating Azadel. When you fight him, it's worth pointing out that he is resistant to fire-based attacks, so you'll want to switch over to something else for that fight. I personally recommend Lightning Bolt. In addition, we also wear Azadel's Ring of Arcana. This will give us access to the spell Ignite, which is amazing for stacking damage, and works wonders on the higher difficulties where enemies can tank damage for ages. Obviously you want to improve this gear as best as you can throughout playing, and you'll also want to add Fortify Destruction enchantments onto any pieces that will take them. This build doesn't have much of a reliance on factions, but there are a couple of faction related things you want to do in order to become stronger. First of all, I would recommend joining the College of Winterhold, in order to easily boost your destruction skill up to 40 early on through skill training. By doing this straight off, you can get the Impact perk really early, which is essential for any destruction mage on the legendary difficulty setting. In addition, you will need to join the Companions, in order to get one of the words of power for the Fire Breath Shout. Other than this, the faction doesn't hold much in the way of interest for the Fire Lord, so don't worry about sticking with them for too long. He will want to go to Solstheim and go through the Dragonborn questline though. This not only gets him closer to Morrowind, but Solstheim suits the build incredibly well, letting him be surrounded by other Dark Elves, and it also contains almost all of his necessary equipment and bonuses. As a follower for this build, I would recommend Teldrin Sero. My subscribers will know that Teldrin is my favourite follower, and I used him in both last week's build, and I'm also currently using him in my level 1 run, due to him being downright awesome. For this build, it makes a lot of sense, as he will be treated like a personal bodyguard for the Fire Lord. He also has a tendency to use Fireball as his main form of dealing damage, and summons a Flame Atronach at the start of combats, just adding even further to the fire theme of the build. The key to playing as any Destruction Mage on the higher difficulties is to use Impact to your advantage. This will let you stagger lock your enemies, and you will have seen in the footage of the video how powerful this is for ensuring enemies are unable to touch you. In addition to this, you will want to focus on stacking damage with the Ignite spell. This deals damage over time, and when it's stacked a few times you'll see your enemy's health bar disappear at a staggering rate. For more information on this spell, I will direct you to the description of this video, which will contain a video detailing just how powerful this spell can be. In addition to Ignite, I also recommend using the Fireball spell to deal with groups of weaker enemies, or for engaging at a distance. This has a 15-foot area of effect, making it great for weakening large groups of foes all at once. Due to its increased cost, it doesn't work as well in a 1 vs 1, but it's still a great addition to your arsenal. For the purposes of roleplaying and variety, feel free to experiment with all the different fire-based spells in the game, and see what different strategies you can come up with. Fire runes can be fun to use in dungeons, you can enchant weapons with fire damage and give them to Teldrin for even more fire-based attacks, and you can surround yourself with a wall of flames to deter melee attackers. Honestly, it's up to you to play around with things and see what you like most of all. As always, I thank you for watching this build. Make sure to let me know if you enjoyed it by giving the video a share, and leaving a like below too. If you're new here, subscribe, and also make sure to leave a comment below telling me of your plans with this build. If you're looking for something to watch right now, then I'd recommend checking out the featured channels I have, clicking on one of the links in the description, or on one of the videos on screen right now.